What's up, guys? This is Maestro, an instructor here at Avant Media Institute. Today, we're going to get on compression. Compression is a beautiful trick that we use to make sure that we glue elements into the mix, meaning that we need to make sure that any low-end parts that are not consistent with the main part of any vocal or any instrument, we're going to bring those up while at the same time getting the two dynamic parts to come down in volume, allowing us to create a better consistent sound envelope throughout the mix. Here we go. So when using compression, we need to make sure that we set our parameters correct. But first we need to understand a little bit more about what the compressor is doing and the best place to use it. A lot of engineers decide that, hey, I want to use compression before EQ. And some will decide after EQ. A lot of times when we want to use it after the EQ, we will only use it if we're doing subtractive EQ at the beginning. Then you want to use the compressor. Otherwise, you'll just be compressing whatever you boost, and you're really not getting the best use out of your EQ. So when it comes to vocals, I'll do subtractive EQ first and then compression afterwards to kind of get it a nice glue together. If I'm using it on instruments, a lot of times I'll use compression first and then use a different technique with my EQ known as housing. Right now, we're gonna look at this lead vocal and we're just gonna give it a little play to see just how dynamic it is.
Thought our love was strong. Why it feels so weak?
Okay, so right there, between these two bars right here, we have how the vocalist comes in really strong, which you can see right here on this waveform, and then goes to the next part and it goes really quiet a little bit right here. We want to make these more consistent throughout the whole complete performance. We use the compressor to do that. So remember, the compressor is going to bring the low end up and meet in the middle with the higher end or the louder parts and bring some of those peaks down in order to create that consistency. So we have our threshold, we have our ratio, attack release, and we also have our gain reduction meter, which is found here, and we have makeup gain. These parameters are all crucial to the whole compression situation that we need to do for this particular element. So I'm gonna highlight these so they will loop so we can hear the difference that the compressor is actually making. In order to do your threshold, what I like to do is figure out, okay, what is going on with my peaks? What exactly is happening? Okay, so I'm going to the mix window and we're starting with the lead vocal track. And on that lead track, you'll see here in this area right below our meter that this is where peaks are recorded. I'm gonna start that over, let it play a little bit.
Thought our love was strong. Why it feels so weak? Thought our love was strong.
So I'm noticing that right now, based on the highlighted area that I have, negative 16.3 is my loudest peak between those two bars or those two stanzas that the lead vocalist just said. What I want to do is I have to make sure that I bring my threshold down below that in order for the compressor to actually turn on. The threshold is the key to the compressor actually activating. If the signal does not cross it, it won't do anything.
Thought our love was strong. Why it feels so weak? Thought our love was strong. Why it feels so weak? Thought our love was strong.
Okay, so I brought it down to about negative 32. Now, to get some compression actually going, we have to make sure our ratio is engaged. Our ratio is just, in the simplest of terms, letting us know just how much compression we're adding. So the threshold is where the compressor activates. The ratio is saying, okay, how much of this compression is actually needed for this signal that's coming in. So what I like to do for lead vocals is I like to do what's called or referred to as squashing, which is a 6-to-1 ratio. So let's bring this down. And really you could do 5-to-1 or 6-to-1. Even though here on this compressor it has C4.47, it's still 4.47 to 1. It's always to 1. So let's go to around 6 and see what kind of gain reduction we're getting.
Thought our love was strong. Why it feels so weak?
Good, so we're getting there. I want my gain reduction, as a rule of thumb, to probably come down to about a -6 dB gain reduction. What's going to possibly change that is our attack and release. Attack and release should not be treated lightly. They are very crucial to the actual compression. Remember, it's gonna compress at one point. When it crosses the threshold, as the signal drops below the threshold, it's gonna decompress and open back up. And that's what's causing the consistency of that waveform. If it's a signal that is aggressive, remember, not necessarily loud. You can have a person whispering on the track and still have an aggressive signal coming across the microphone. So if the signal is aggressive, then we want a medium to fast attack. If it's non-aggressive, then we want a medium to slow attack. That would be your range. That would be how we would gauge this. And the reason being is because the faster the attack, the quicker compression will actually happen when that signal crosses the threshold. When it comes to release, release is after that compression happens, how long does it take for that signal to go back to normal? In other words, to drop back below the threshold. How long does that take? It can quickly drop, or it can take its time and drop below the threshold. That's what our release is referring to. I determine release based on the speed of the actual lyrics, the actual performance, the way they're singing it. And I want the gain reduction meter to pretty much emulate that vocal as it's responding. So let's try this. I feel like this vocal is gonna be a little aggressive. So we're gonna do a medium to fast attack. Okay, let's not do it all the way fast, but maybe somewhere midway for now until we can make our adjustments once we start playing the track. And then for our release, the song has a pretty medium type speed, so we can leave the release right where it is. All right, let's hear what we got.
Thought our love was strong. Why it feels so weak? Thought our love was strong. Why it feels so weak?
Notice how when the first part of it, the gain reduction meter goes down to about -6, maybe a little past it. On that second part, the quiet part, there's not much gain reduction at all. That's because the compressor understands the signal between it being dynamic or overly dynamic versus not having much dynamics at all and bringing that part up to meet in the middle. So let's hear it from the beginning and see what we're getting.
Thought our love was strong. Why it feels so weak? Thought our love was tall. Under 3 feet. It's confusing. Why you believe?
Okay, so we got a nice consistency happening now. The problem is though, because we are compressing, the sound envelope does lose a little bit of its dynamic range. We need to make up for that dynamic range being lost. What we want to do is go to our makeup gain or our output. Sometimes it'll just be labeled output, or it'll actually say makeup gain. In this case, it just says gain and output. And we want to bring that up. And what that'll do is actually take the compression itself up in the mix. You don't want to run to your fader and turn the fader up thinking that that's going to only turn the compression up. Remember, you have a signal chain of different plugins and processes happening. So if you turn the fader up, which is the last point before your master bus, then it's turning every process up. We don't want to do that. We're just concerned about the compression right now. So let's turn the makeup gain up some to taste to see what we get.
Thought our love was strong. Why it feels so weak? Thought our love was tall. Under 3 feet. It's confusing. Why you believe?
And that is what compression is doing. Whenever you need to use compression to control it and you need it to fit into the music, that's the route you want to take. That's the tool you want to bring up and use. Remember, you're making something overly dynamic and big, and you're bringing it in and making it smaller so it can fit. Try not to think of it in terms of volume. Think of it in terms of an explosion being under control.